Think Different. Who remembers this campaign? 1997, almost to this day, when Steve Jobs came back to Apple, it was 3 months away from bankruptcy, and he launched this campaign because he knew that nothing remarkable in this world comes from following the status quo. This was a campaign about us. It was a campaign about thinking different, about the crazy ones, the rebels, the misfits, the ones that push the human race forward. We wrote books about them, we made movies about them. They inspired us, we even let them lead us. But don't be fooled, these crazy ones, they're all around us, maybe even in this room. So as we move from a world of products to services, we're going to need you to think different. As we move from a world of ownership to access, we're going to need you to think different. And as we move from a world of scarcity into a world of abundance, we're going to need you to think different. Because that's what technology does. It turns scarce resources into abundant resources. So for the next 20 minutes or so, we're going to follow in the footsteps of David Bowie, who sung to us from his grave. He was a man that created an ISP in the early 90s, before most people didn't even know what the internet was. They called him crazy, and he said artists would be born and bred on the internet. And he was famous for this quote, "The future belongs to those who hear it coming." You see, because the future hasn't been written yet. You need to listen to it. And it's already here, but it's unevenly distributed. So why do we get to this point? 2 decades after the Think Different campaign, 1 decade after the iPhone was launched, and the COO of AdBlock Plus stands up on stage earlier this year with a message supported by the ERB saying, "We messed up. We lost track of user experience." And it's really because of this. The best minds of our generation are trying to figure out how to get people to click more ads. It's the Googles, it's the Facebooks, but it's also us. And we have a responsibility to fix this. But we've got to realize that in a mobile environment, the only ads people want to see are the ads they would miss if they were not there. Who's watched Mad Men? Who knows Don Draper? He's quite a character, isn't he? So you see in the 50s and 60s, when it went from radio to television, and the TV industrial complex was born, it was unheard of that people blocked your ads. They couldn't. They could turn the TV off, or they could shut their eyes. But now they can, because they're empowered. Because really, technology turns scarcity into abundance. And now users can block ads. This is a slide from Mary Meeker's State of the Internet report earlier this year. The red line are ad blockers on desktop. The green line are ad blockers on mobile. This thing's not about to stop. It's going to continue. And what's Google doing? Well, they're building an ad blocker by default into Chrome because they know that people are going to get a hold of ad blockers. It may as well come from Google. So it's about going from the old into the new. The digital transformation. Adapting to a digital age. But to go into the new, you sometimes have to let go of the old. And right now, where it is for you guys, it's this thing. It's the Think Different. It's 10 years ago, the launch of the iPhone that popularized these second brains that we carry in our pockets. They empower us to be who we want to be, to connect to what we want to connect. And we've already spoken about artificial intelligence. We've already spoken about intelligent assistants. These are things we're going to start having conversations with that are going to connect us to all these weird and wonderful things that digital has to offer. And this is what it's about. We're trying to now build relationships through technology. Facebook, LinkedIn, they're digitalized versions of our relationships. You see, data's worth nothing unless it moves. Currency is worth nothing unless it moves. These platforms, these technologies promote the movement of information that makes it valuable. But to understand relationships in a digital ecosystem, you need to understand data and how to use that data. Because in the data is where you find the love or the hate. Are people doing what people need to be doing? Are people doing what my business needs them to be doing in order to stay alive? And we love our screens. They're abundant. We keep connecting to them. We keep spending our time on them. We keep devoting our attention to them. And the customer journey from exploration to purchase is getting more and more complex. But it's only the beginning. This thing's about to explode because an invisible revolution is coming, something we can't even see. And that's a smartification of our world. All these devices that we may or may not have in our lives, they're being smartified. And they're all digital touch points. And they're all brands stepping in already, trying to build relationships through technology, trying to understand the consumer, help them live their lives. See, these are the cutting edge brands that are already building technology because they understand that putting technology into people's lives allows me to understand those people anywhere. Allows me to understand the relationships I have with those people anywhere where these devices are. And of course, the mobile phone's at the center. We've spoken about the Internet of Things. You know, technology grows exponentially. That's what technology does. It can, it's binary, but we don't. So on the one side, you have innovation. That's all these brands building all these wonderful products, putting them into our lives. But on the other side, you have adaptation. How do I deal with this as a business, but also as a consumer? We're having to adapt to technology. It's only the beginning. It's the plumbing phase. We're trying to connect all these things up. They're not working very well. But slowly but surely, we're seeing the capabilities. From wearables to connected TVs to connected cars, soon connected cities, and connected everything. Slowly but surely, we're adopting them as they work, as they help us live better lives. Conversational commerce is coming. We've talked about this. Virtual assistants are coming. These are assistants, they're going to have relationships with us. We're going to have relationships with them. But there are only so many relationships we can have in our lives. The Dunbar number, who's heard of the Dunbar number? 150 meaningful relationships. After that, things start to break down. This is scientifically proven. And we now are capable of having and maintaining thousands of relationships. But what you notice is that the more relationships we have, the less meaning they hold. From Siri, Apple, to Cortana, Microsoft, to Alexa, Amazon, to the Google Assistant. Very smart move from Google. They didn't give their assistant a name because you already have a relationship with Google, and we don't need more relationships. So meaningful connections. It's a model I built last year. Early last year, was really trying to help people understand just what the internet is, you know, and how we use it. It's a compass. It's a guide. It helps you think. On the one side, you have the security. So this is a responsibility of the platforms. If you're reading the Equifax story, the first instance of death penalty for a corporate company. Should this company be allowed to exist? They've abused our data. They've abused and they haven't holden true to one of the key components, and that's keeping our data secure. The World Wide Web are linked devices that generate data. We call it IoT because there's a lot of things, a lot of devices, soon to be IoE. That's when we're perpetually connected to it, the Internet of Everything. Big data because there's a lot of it. And when you can connect it in meaningful ways, then you can draw insights from that data. And really where Google came and were able to really capitalize on the moment that they were in, that all they did was, you know, collect and organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. It wasn't a very, I mean, information defines who we are in the end, so information's important, so they managed to collect that. But what they were able to do, they were able to build relationships with us by giving us the right answer. Because all they did is put up a search bar and put the world's information behind it, and we went there and we asked them questions. We told them what we wanted. The holy grail of marketing. Marketing is turning needs into wants. Just ask what people want. And they were able to understand us more and more and give us a more and more personalized answer. But the next step is experience. Think of Google Maps. So it's getting from A to B. With Google, it's Google that gets you from A to B. It's Google that gives you the information and empowers you with technology to get from A to B more efficiently and cheaper. Ultimately, most of these apps and most of these technologies that we use, they're empowering. They help us make better use of our time, our most important asset. They drive value in the form of saving time, but also in the form of monetary value. Think of Amazon. It's much cheaper to buy online sometimes. And for this to be sustainable, they need to help us live happier, healthier, and more productive lives. Because happiness is something we all have in common. When you make people happy, they'll come back for more. And that's how this system is sustainable. That's how people start to evangelize your brand or your products or your services, and they start to want their family members and friends to use them as well, because they're trying to help them too. One example before I move on. I tend to love to stay on this slide. I can speak for hours on it, but Amazon. So I'm going to tell you now how Amazon is disrupting the relationships that you have as retailers. So you see, Amazon built this nifty little app. It's called the Price Checker app. And you download it for free and you put it on your phone, and you already have a relationship with Amazon. You've got a Prime account, and you walk into that bookstore where you used to buy your books from, you scan the barcode, and you see in the Amazon Price Checker app that Amazon has it for half price. And you click one button, and it's waiting for you when you get home. You see, you used to buy in that bookstore, but now Amazon has used technology to understand what you want, because they have recommendation engines. They'll give you similar books. They understand what you want, and they help you consume in a frictionless environment. Great. So now what? So this is the point of the presentation where you say, Chris, I've heard this story before. Chris, I know sort of what I need to do. Chris, please help me get there. What do I need to do? How do I need to do it? And Chris, please do it quickly, or get the fuck off stage. You see, this is us in these bags. You see, these bags are preventing us from meeting our future. But before you realize what's in this bag, you've got to also realize it's not about finding Nemo anymore. It's about finding a way to survive and thrive in this new ecosystem. It's about finding the jaws of life that are going to get you out of this bag. And you also need to understand who you are before you start ripping this bag open. Because there's nothing worse than ripping this bag open and falling into a sea of endless opportunity to realize that you're a freshwater fish. All right, concrete. We face three key challenges. One of them is 65% of decisions start on mobile but end up somewhere else. But the challenge is cross-device. The real problem is measurement. Another one, a big challenge, online to offline, this omni-channel holy grail. 93% of purchases end up in a store. The challenge is an omni-channel. The challenge is in measurement. And another one, attributing value. 65% of marketers still use a last-click attribution model. The problem isn't attribution, you guessed it. The problem's measurement. Before we start, this is a sort of the saltwater, freshwater thing, right? There's a promise and there's a reality. So in an ideal world, the promise that Google's telling us is that cross-device retargeting works, and it sure does, but only in a Google ecosystem, only in a Facebook ecosystem. MRAID 3.0, a new standard by the ERB to try and understand and measure engagement on screens. We're at 2.0 now, it's not here yet. It's a promise for the years to come. It helps us measure in-app and in-browser in a standardized way whereby we can actually trust what we're measuring. CTR. We love those clicks, don't we? Remember, the best minds of our generation are trying to figure out how to get people to click more ads. But what's behind the click? Why are people clicking? We've figured out ways of actually making it easier to click than not to click. Why are people clicking? And these screens are so small. We need super thumbs. What's behind the click? And mobile conversions. Is mobile the best place to be measuring conversions? Or should we be redefining what a conversion means on mobile? All right. What should I measure on mobile? So there are 4 key opportunities right now. One's engagement, not clicks, engagement. How are people engaging with the screen? How are they scrolling? How fast are they scrolling? You know, maybe they saw an ad, they were scrolling down, and then they scrolled back up to consume the rest of that ad. Wouldn't it be great to measure that? You've captured their attention. Swiping. There are ad formats now like cubes and carousels where you can actually measure the engagement. You've managed to capture someone's attention. Now, how well are they believing in your story? How far are they swiping through? Visibility. Again, a challenge. MRAID should solve this as it improves. It's visual engagement. We're very visual creatures. How are people engaging with your ads visually? Viewability. Location. You know, we're very mobile creatures. We move around with these things. They're always in our pocket or in our hands. How can we use geofencing, geotargeting in order to narrow down audiences so that we can spend our money more efficiently? have more money to play with. Make our dollar go further. Video, big opportunity now. They say that by 2020, 70% of content will be consumed via video. Video is a great way to measure engagement. How far down the video did people get? And now we have tools with YouTube and with Facebook that allow you to segment down audiences of how engaged they were and retarget them with sequential messaging to pull them into the relationship. Just like with everything, we start small and we think big. There are ways now to connect the online and offline. Google's building these ways. Facebook's building these ways. I'm going to show you two right now. It's called store visits and store sales. These are functional now in AdWords, soon in the display and in TrueView for YouTube. That's a promise that we're going to get next year or the year after. But right now, it's a reality in AdWords. Great, it only works in a Google ecosystem, so you need an integration method to connect the dots. And I'll talk to you about that now. So store visits is simply measuring how someone engaged with you in a digital context and trying to figure out whether they actually walked into your store. Very simple, right? Be nice to have. Then we can attribute value on store visits. Store sales. So that's actually someone engaging with your ad, whether it be a click or a view or whatever, and actually figuring out, did that person end up buying in my store? Was there a transaction? Now, this works, but the user needs to be signed into Google. So the next step in order to do this is that you have to start to connect the dot. You have to start to import your own data and connect these different data points and match customers. So matching user IDs. So that's why loyalty cards are quite important still. Now, understanding how a user is consuming, understanding their mobility of human experience, their experience from discovery to purchase in your store, because 93% of purchases are still in stores, in the Netherlands at least. One example of how to build meaningful connections at scale is through dynamic advertising. BeGenius, one of our tools, has a way of actually digitalizing your inventory, feed management. It's really just the mobilization of information you already have. Your products in a digital format, customizable, scalable. You can combine these in weird ways in order to create advertising where the price and the information appears in the ad in real time, creating a meaningful connection. You've measured signals from the user and you're able to bring in the exact price and the exact information based on what that user wants at that moment in that device. Has a quality control step, so you're making sure you're not putting trash out on the internet and causing poor user experience. And ultimately, you're building meaningful connections through all of the platforms, from AdWords to Bing to Marktplaats and so on. What happens? Well, you go from a manual process into an automated process. You see, it's not just BeGenius. Google's also building these tools. There are two tools you can use for this. Double click, BeGenius. But you know, at the end of the day, I wouldn't feel right standing up here talking about BeGenius without really talking about BeGenius. Who's seen Fight Club? What's the #1 rule of Fight Club? You don't talk about Fight Club. What's the #2 rule about Fight Club? Come on, what's the #3 rule about Fight Club? You don't talk about Fight Club. But you see, BeGenius is not Fight Club. We're allowed to talk about BeGenius. And BeGenius doesn't play by Fight Club rules, because BeGenius empowers marketers to create their own rules. There are 3 components of BeGenius. One of them is campaign management. That's about managing bids and budgets across all of the platforms. Another one is feed management. I just spoke to you about that one, digitalizing your inventory and being able to leverage it in a digital ecosystem. Dynamic advertising, creating meaningful connections at scale without much work. From there, you have integration of your own data and feed management, so being able to digitalize your inventory. From there, you can integrate third-party data from Google Analytics to Adobe to Google Search Console. You can connect it to DMPs such as Relay42. You can you can connect it to all the different flavors ad platforms, from AdWords to Amazon to Facebook, double-click AdForm. Amazon, the behemoth, the platform that might disrupt us all, even Google and Facebook. Did you know that 20 to 30% of customer journeys in the US and in Germany start on Amazon? How can I bring this, how can I measure this so that I can attribute value to where the consumer is? It's not just mobile anymore. It's what platforms are people on. Connecting to social platforms where we spend most of our time, or at least the kids. Connecting to eBay, Marktplatz, Bull, and also all the different flavors of search engines, because it's not just about Google. In China, it's Baidu. In Russia, it's Yandex. In America, Bing has 32% market share. It's about connecting to these platforms too to help companies internationalize, reach new audiences, explore new markets. Be genius in 60 seconds. All right, so last couple of slides. A successful optimization engine. So measurement's great, but it doesn't work if you don't have the right building blocks in place. And these are the building blocks. People, process, technique with an enabling organizational structure. In the people, you need people that have a learning mindset. Don't make assumptions, they test them. They have the right skills and they're able to work efficiently together. Process, this is a process that promotes experimentation. Again, not making assumptions, but testing them. Test, learn, validate, iterate, pivot if you need to. The process needs to enable that. Technique, technology is growing exponentially. It's going to be abundant in our lives in the future. Implement a tag manager in browser, in app, in device, if that even exists. Implement a tag manager that allows you to leave your IT team alone because they have their own problems to worry about. We got cyber warfare coming, cyber security. A tag manager allows you to implement, test, and learn from different technologies in order to figure out which is the right one for you. And an enabling organizational structure, because if the structure is not enabling, you hit up against a brick wall. And we all know what that feels like. It impedes innovation, it frustrates us, and we end up leaving the organization for maybe a better place. Last slide. Growing revenue and budgets through validated learning. It's a process. It starts with you. Your goal is to build better customer relationships. So you do that through defining what to measure, KPIs. What's important to you in a relationship? Measuring it and learning from it. So using a CRO approach, for example, to be able to test and learn and validate assumptions. From there, you improve user experience because that's ultimately the goal. And what happens? Well, Google rewards you with better organic search rankings. Google rewards you, and other search engines reward you with improved SEO performance. You start to convert more, regardless of the screen and regardless of whether you can measure it or not. But if your goal is to convert on mobile, then that goes up as well because the user's happier. They're having a better experience. They're doing the things they need to be doing. Drives revenue, it increases return on ad spend, and ultimately gives you more money, more advertising budget to repeat this process over again. So, the future belongs to those who hear it coming, but only briefly by those who build it. Thank you.